What up, YEG? Welcome back to another episode of City of Champions podcast, where I talk with the most interesting people in Edmonton from the world of sports, business, and the arts. Today, I sat down with Kaylor Betts. Now, many of you know Kaylor as the driving force behind TNP Fitness. Many of you also probably are aware that it abruptly closed its doors this summer after expanding into a new location. What you likely don't know is why this happened. There's been a lot of shade thrown Kaylor's way for closing down TNP, and that's been fueled by gossip, speculation, and negativity. Nobody wakes up in the morning thinking that they're a bad person, and we're all doing the best we can within our own consciousness. This is vital to understand. Today, I want to give you listeners an opportunity to hear from Kaylor himself about his reality, overcoming adversity, and then forging on with more wisdom, motivation than ever before. So let's get into it with Kaylor. Kaylor Betts, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
How are you?
Honored to be here, Shane.
Yeah, you're the first guest in my new office.
Oh, nice.
What do you think?
It's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. Maybe it needs a little bit of a touch-up, but it's got a lot of potential, put it that way.
Yeah, a lot of blank space to paint on the canvas.
No, I love it.
So for my audience here, I'm going to give you a nice glowing introduction, which I typically do with people, but they're not here to hear me. They're here to hear you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your origin story?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll get a lot into it, so maybe I'll just give the Coles notes right now. But my name's Kaylor Betts. I'm an entrepreneur in Edmonton, and I just recently closed down a business that I had been working on for 5 years. We had been operating for 4. It was called TNP Fitness, and it was a private gym here in Edmonton. And so that's kind of the career side of things. I think personally, what people who don't know me, what they could maybe know about me is I'm just absolutely addicted to growth and getting better every day, and I'm constantly learning. I'm obsessed with books and podcasts, and then I'm also on the other side of things obsessed with putting that stuff into action, and I want to get to a point where I have a business that is successful, that gives me a platform for the life that I want to lead. So. Yeah,
absolutely. And you can tell like your desire to grow and improve consistently was so obvious when we met for coffee or lunch last week. I mean, we nerded out about all the podcasts that we listened to.
Yeah, I love nerding out with that kind of stuff for sure. Yeah.
So what got you into fitness in the first place? I know everyone's eager to hear about TNP, but let's warm them up a little bit here. What got you into fitness? Did you play in any sports growing up? Or?
Yeah, I was really involved in sports, big basketball player, really into basketball, really passionate about that growing up. Played decently high level. I played like provincial basketball, and I ended up going to play on Grant MacEwan, so college basketball.
Let me ask you something about basketball. Sure. As a hockey player, when you're young, like 10 to 15 to 16, everyone thinks they're going to make the NHL.
Yeah.
Or at least everyone wants to, and whether they're lying to themselves or not, that's the plan. Is it the same way with basketball? Or are you like, man, I'm going to play in the NBA one day?
No, it's a great question. Not really. I think maybe for some people, I'm kind of a realist. With basketball, unfortunately, it's not like hockey. There's very few Canadians that play in the NBA. There's very few Canadians that even go to play the NCAA, which is a step down from the NBA. So for me, my goal was university ball. That's kind of like where, I guess a realistic goal would be, but still also a very kind of honorable goal would be to get to in the basketball field, at least in Canada. So that was kind of my goal, but no, it wasn't to play in the NBA.
Did you end up playing college, university?
Yeah, I played college at Grant MacEwan, and I dropped out, which we'll probably get to. School was not really my strong suit, and I would have loved to have played university. I do feel I could have, but schooling was a factor in that. You need to have good grades to play university ball, and I just didn't have that.
So I mean, obviously the fitness goes hand in hand with basketball. When did you, and are you more of like a gym kind of pump and iron guy, or are you more of like a functional lifestyle, working out, doing some indoor stuff?
Well, I'll go back to what you originally asked as far as how I got into the fitness industry. I think for me, I mentioned I wasn't good in school. I actually didn't graduate high school. I was 3 credits short of graduating high school.
How'd you get into McEwen then?
As a mature student.
Okay.
Sorry, no, that's a good question. I was upgrading at Grant MacEwan
Gotcha.
because it was they have Alberta College there, which is associated with Grant MacEwan, where you can take high school courses.
Yeah.
And then it's associated with Grant MacEwan. So I was able to play on the team, luckily. Grant MacEwan was pretty much the only option in that way. So I ended up taking high school courses, upgrading at Alberta College, and playing on the basketball team. And I ended up dropping out. I just couldn't get my head around the school thing, and
and that's fair. Why pound a square peg into a round hole, right?
Yeah,
find where you fit.
Exactly. So for me, I was a little bit lost, and to be really honest with you, I grew up very insecure about my intelligence because the system that we have to measure success growing up told me I was a failure. Right? Like it told me that I was 3 credits short of graduating, and even despite a decent amount of effort, I failed in that regard. So I literally thought that I was dumb. Like I thought I was very unintelligent. But yet I always had this burning desire to live an extraordinary life and do extraordinary things. And I always wanted to be like someone who touched a lot of people in many ways and built something incredible. So I had this really weird paradox of like, okay, I don't believe in my abilities, but I'm super ambitious to accomplish things. And for some reason, I just had this epiphany one day, like I'm good at physical things, I'm good at fitness, right? So why not teach people how to, and there's a lot of opportunity. It's a growing business, a growing industry. So I got into to fitness, and it was funny because it was the first time that I ever felt.
What do you got a caller? Turn that thing off. Come on, man.
Sorry, I know Hollywood over here. Sorry,
it's all right.
It's my first podcast. You got to give me some slack here.
First of many. That's okay. We'll keep rolling with it.
But so I got into fitness, and I immediately knew right away I was good at it, and there was some potential there, and I got that kind of feedback. And it was like the first time in my life I was good at something other than sports. Like I was good at something that could potentially lead to me achieving something extraordinary. And I absolutely got addicted to it. That's my personality. When I get into something, I get into it very heavily. And so that's kind of how I got into it. You asked me, secondly, if I'm kind of a lifter or a functional guy. I started off as a lifter. I was about 45 pounds heavier than I am today.
Seriously?
Yeah, of pure muscle.
So what do you weigh now, and what did you weigh?
I'm anywhere. I'm sitting around 193.
Okay.
Yeah, 193, which is like a good weight for me. I like being around that. I like being under 200.
You're a lean 193 too, right?
Yeah, fairly lean. Like I'd like to be maybe a little leaner, a little more muscle mass, but so I was like 235, I think was maybe my heaviest.
Wow.
And I was really into bodybuilding and just lifting, and I just wanted to be huge and ripped, and as a young guy that you think that's going to give you more confidence. And then as my career went on, it started to become more into the functional side of things, and really actually started caring about my body, and I realized that girls don't all really like the huge macho.
It all comes back to girls, hey?
Yeah, juice. Yeah, it really does.
I started working out.
Revolves around.
In grade 10, I started working out because the girl I really liked and my best friend liked the same girl. Yeah. She chose him, and then a week later comes back to me and is like, I chose the guy who had the looks and the athleticism, but really I liked your personality more. And it was like a backhanded compliment, though. Yeah. I just thought, okay, that's nice, but hit the gym and decided then to never let physical fitness ever be a constraint to me getting someone that I wanted to get. You know 100%. What I mean?
Yeah, that's a good call, Shane. It's one of those things you got to have good intentions going into it, and cosmetically is all cause. My motivation in the gym will always have an aspect of cosmetics, but for the most part, it's more about stress release and feeling better and health and longevity and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, I think too, what you realize is that if your goal is just to be the biggest or the whatever, the most this or the most that, your competition is so massive. Like, you're never going to be the biggest. You're never going to be the fastest, no matter how driven you are. Some people just have the physical ability to do that and some don't. So,
and I check my ego at the door too when I go in the gym. Like, I literally and I actually think some people look at me who know that I'm a trainer and know what I do, and they see what I'm doing and they're probably like, what are you, like, he must be rehabbing from an injury or something. Like, you know, I just check my ego at the door. I don't try and lift the heaviest. I try and lift heavy, but I really more focus on doing things with a purpose. And sometimes that's like really losing the ego and like actually doing things properly instead of trying to show off.
Right.
You know,
so when you started getting into training people, then how rewarding was that? I mean, you said that was your passion.
Amazing. Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but it was amazing. The first story that really got me, you know, I mentioned that I really found out that I had some potential in the industry is I had a gentleman. He was a lawyer, 45 years old. He was my first client, and we used to do, one of my first clients, we used to do weigh-ins every week. He wanted to lose 50 pounds. He wanted to be under 200 pounds. He had a mentally handicapped kid he had a child who was in a wheelchair, actually physically handicapped, and he had to carry him around a lot, carry him up the stairs, and he, as he was getting older, he was finding that he couldn't do that. So anyways, he was having trouble. He came to me with a really strong why, really strong purpose, and we did weigh-ins every week, and we always tried to lose 1 to 3 pounds every week. And we got to a point where he had lost a ton of weight, and he was almost at the under 200 pound mark, and I think he was 201 or whatever. And he came into my office on the weigh-in day, and I think our goal for that week specifically was to be under 200 pounds.
Yeah.
He stepped on the scale, and he was about 199, and it was incredible. I thought, wow, like, it was my first 50 pound client.
Yeah.
So he stepped on the scale, and he gets off the scale, and his head's down, and he's not really looking at me or anything, and he kind of wasn't saying anything, and I was jacked, and I'm like, man, this is amazing. Like, why aren't you excited? So I said, hey, like, is everything okay? Like, are you doing okay? And he looked up at me, and he had tears in his eyes.
Wow.
You know, and I'm a 19-year-old punk who just thinks I'm like, you know, trying to figure my life out.
Yeah.
You know, just trying to apply something I already know a little bit of, and I really didn't, and he said to me, I haven't been under 200 pounds in like 15 years or something like that. Obviously getting very emotional, and I was starting to get emotional, and from that, I'll never forget that moment. That was the moment that I said to myself, like, Kaylor, there's something here. Like, you are, this is a sign, and this is something that you should be doing. So I hope that answered your question. That is kind of what really, I didn't realize the impact that I was having on people, and that's one of the great things about the training industry is you're truly, really positively affecting people's lives, like big time.
Right. I don't think we ever, especially when we're younger, realize how much of an impact we have on other people. We're so self-centered and 100%. Just going through our lives and, me. And I think priorities shift as you age. But for you to realize that at 19 years old is pretty tremendous. I want to ask you about another client of yours I was reading up on by the name of Scotty.
Yeah, Scotty Mergart. Oh man, that's I mean, talk about emotion. He means the world to me. I call him one of my mentors. I guess I'll maybe give us Scotty's backstory. People who don't know, Scotty has Down syndrome. Scotty's pretty much the exact same age as me. I met Scotty in junior high. We went to the same junior high together, and I kind of took a liking to him right away. We were best buds even in junior high, and there were some instances where he was getting picked on, and I was sticking up for him, and even though I was a kind of a punk myself at that age, I still deep down just had this connection with him, and I just wanted to be his friend. He's if you met him, you'd kind of understand. He's an infectious person. But anyways, our relationship grew throughout junior high and high school. He was on my junior high basketball team, and he was in high school. He was kind of the ball boy, towel boy, kind of the Joey Moss of, and he looks up to Joey Moss. Joey Moss is that's fantastic. He loves Joey Moss, and So anyways, we got really close in high school, and I got really close with his family. Then when I went to go play at Grant MacEwan, he was the ball boy at Grant MacEwan, and he's been there for like 15 years or something insane like that. So he's really a big part of the Grant MacEwan Basketball Association. And so then when I went into the fitness industry, his mom approached me one day and asked me if I would train him. And I obviously said I jumped all over it. And our relationship from then on grew even stronger. To the point where we became, he's one of my best friends. If I got married tomorrow, he'd be in my wedding party without a doubt. And, he is the best way I can describe why I call him one of my mentors and why he's just a incredible part of my life is because he just gives you a whole new perspective on life. He's one of those people that I wrote an article for YG Fitness not too long ago, and I talked about a situation where I was very stressed out at work one day, and I was training him, and I almost called and canceled to his mom, but I just stuck it out, and I was just worrying about the dumbest things, just business formalities, just stupid things that don't even matter, getting stressed and just all that stuff. And he came up, he walked in the door, and he always has this huge smile on his face, and it's like I said, it's infectious. And he always says to me, he says these two words that literally could change your life. He just says, Kaylor, relax, and he's got this huge smile on his face, and it's just the way he says it. It's just so cute. And so anyways, I was sitting there, and he noticed that I was being a little bit aggravated, and he sat down, and he looked at me, and he just said, hey, Kaylor, relax. And I, like, literally, it sounds, kind of a little stereotypical or cheesy, but it literally, that moment changed my life, because one of my favorite quotes is, life is too important to take seriously. And he is a great example of, he just doesn't take life too seriously. He doesn't worry about the same problems that most of us are worrying about day in, day out. And, we get so caught up in all this crap that really doesn't even matter. And he just wants to come in and have a good time and love and connect. And that's really, I don't know, it's something that I think we can all take notes from. Sure.
Absolutely. I mean, like a simpler outlook on life, I think, would suit a lot more of us. And it's just incredible that we're so fortunate to get those lessons from people whose personalities and spirit shine through.
Absolutely.
Funny quote I heard about Joey Moss is someone said he's the most famous person in Edmonton who doesn't even know it.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny, like, Scotty's a little bit the same way too. Like, he doesn't, I don't think maybe he does. I hope he does. I hope he realizes the impact that he has, and Joey Moss is a great example of that. Like, that's just hilarious, and it's so true. He's one of those people you meet, you'll never forget him. Yeah. And, I hope he knows the impact that he has, for sure.
So between Scotty and your other client, you've got the juices burning, or the embers burning to start your own fitness company. So take us into TNP.
Yeah. So at that point, I again, going back to, I always wanted to do something extraordinary in life, and I'm one of those people that if I do something, I have to do it big. Even sometimes that even hurts me. I got into it. I got very ambitious about it. I started to learn a lot about the industry and started building up a really good clientele and being very successful at it. And
where are you training people out of?
So I first started working at World Health it was actually called Club Fit back in those days. I sound so old saying that. That's funny.
Club Fit. Wow, that's a real thinker of a name.
Yeah, Club Fit.
Clever
Then
name.
World Health bought it out and all that stuff. But then I went over to Good Life. So I spent a couple years working in just box gyms, and it was great. It got my feet wet and taught me about the industry and stuff like that. But then it was like, okay, what do I do to take this to the next level? That's kind of the way I am. It's like, I'm always looking for what's the next step. If you're not growing, you're dying type thing. And so then I started my own little business working at a rec centers. That allowed me to be a sole proprietor and have my own business, make my own schedule, and build up a client base. And that was great. That was basically the first business. Well, one of the first businesses I ever started. And, it was great. It was awesome. I started having to go out and get my own clients. And that's when I learned about marketing and branding and stuff. so that was great. Did that for a couple of years, and then I got the opportunity I found a space that I could open up TNP in.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, excited and ambitious, and I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I just thought, let's do this. I had a fire under my butt, and I was like, let's do this. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to own my own business. I want to build something extraordinary. I want to take this thing across the country. I want to conquer the world, basically. And
for timeline's sake, what year was this?
This was 2013.
Okay.
I believe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it would have been like five years ago. So I opened up the facility. I worked so hard. It took me about 6 to 8 months ish. And, I was working just stupid hours and pulling all-nighters, and I remember I set up a little office in this building before it was just a dump. Like, there was demo all over the place, and I remember just planning, like thinking, I just dreamed every day of like planning this business that I had. No one knew what the hell I was doing, and that was exciting. And then after I think it was like 8 months of kind of planning and getting all of that together and doing what it took to open it up, I finally launched it. And it was cool. It started off pretty good. Like, I kind of surprised myself, and it was good. So that was kind of the roots and the start of TNP.
What was the landscape of the fitness community like back then? Was it as kind of fervent as it is now?
That's a great question. No, it was actually it was different in a lot of ways back then. I think the biggest thing that comes to mind was it was not as saturated. I still don't think it's really too saturated, but it wasn't as crowded. We were truly I'll never forget. I remember we hustled in the beginning, and like we were texting and calling and Facebook messaging and emailing people like, hey, come out to our classes. We just started this new thing called TNP. Come out to our group classes. And I'll never forget, people didn't know what they were getting into. Like, it wasn't like, honestly, most people hadn't been to a group class or a HIIT class, which is what we specialized in.
Right.
Most people didn't know what the hell they were getting into. Nowadays, 90% of people around our age have gone to some sort of group class, right? Or HIIT class or boot camp or something like that. So that was one of the biggest. And personal training too. It wasn't as well known. Like, people didn't know what they were getting into.
Right. So you think it's more in vogue now to go and try and become a personal trainer or have a personal trainer?
No question, it's grown. I still think, some people don't know what they're getting into, but it's not uncommon to know. I think everyone knows a handful of people who have either had a personal trainer or been to group classes or go to group classes consistently. But back then we were kind of just it wasn't like a completely unknown industry. It already had some feet and some legs, no question, but it was still a little bit like, okay, what do you guys exactly do? Yeah. So
it seems like there's a lot more specialization now. Like, there's bar class, or there's, like, if you're into a certain sport, you train that way.
Well,
versus just one size fits all for a physical regimen.
Yeah, because from like a business standpoint, that's just the smarter thing to do. When you get into a crowded space, niching is like the smart thing to do, and that would be one of my kind of things. If I had to go back and do it all over again, I would niche for sure, because that's just the smarter way of doing things.
Right.
And those are who's killing it. The YEG Cycles, the yoga, the Moksha Yoga Studio. Like, anyone who has that niche they're the ones that are killing it, right?
But I always wonder with those places, is that not just a fad? Like, will they hit it hard for 2-3 years and then really die out?
So that would be my fear, is the inability to be able to pivot, and not to criticize these companies, because they're doing phenomenal, and I mean, God, all the power to them. But my fear in something like that would be, is that good? I think yoga is a bit of a different story. I don't think yoga's going anywhere.
It's really stuck since it came up like 10 years ago.
Because it's like a religion, man. Yeah. Like, I don't mean yoga, people treat it, but I mean religion in the fact that people like get so immersed in it that it's their life. But yeah, that if you really niche, that would be my fear, is like, is it going to be around in 5 years? And then if it's not, how do you pivot, right? Like, you are the company for that niche. So yeah, so I mean, ultimately this is leading into my thoughts on the fitness industry and kind of why I, struggled with it near the end. And, that's kind of...
So back to the story, the timeline here. So you started TNP, you got into your own gym. It was going well for a few years. And then what happened?
Yeah, I mean, I was on cloud 9 for probably 3 years. I mean, the business was going great, and we started to get popular on social media, and, I was starting to meet some, a bunch of new people, and people were starting to pat me on the back, and I was seeing lots of new faces come in and all that stuff.
As someone who struggled, sorry to interrupt, but this is important at this point in time, as someone who struggled with kind of confidence when you were younger, and this must have just been so vindicating. You must have felt so good that you're like, hey, I'm not an idiot. Like, I'm actually good at stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point, which was a pro and a con. The pro was that it was actually giving me some realization, like, Kaylor, you actually are doing some really intelligent things, and you actually, have a lot of potential. The con was that I was equating my self-worth to the business.
Yeah.
So the business turned into me,
right?
And if the business wasn't going well, then I wasn't doing
interesting.
well.
Okay, you were living it to the extreme.
Yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of business owners can relate to that. I mean, when you open up a business, it's your life. Like, it is literally hands down the only thing you have going on in your life. I don't care what anyone says, unless you start a little side thing or whatever. But yeah, you could become completely immersed in it. And for me, it was because my ambition came from a little bit of insecurity, and I'm being really honest about that. I think a lot of very successful people are very insecure. I mean, their ambition comes from like some sort of
chip on your shoulder,
something that happened when they were young or whatever. And I embraced that.
There's nothing wrong with that. If you can use that to your advantage, but the key is, and I think like you said, don't let it bring you down. Only let that bring you up, right?
Yes. So I had to maintain an identity outside of TNP, and that was a really hard thing for me. It was really hard too because in social settings, I mean, Edmonton's so small, right? Especially because we're a flashy business on social media. Everywhere I went, I people were like, "How's TNP?" Like, "Oh, it looks like it's doing so amazing." Blah blah blah, and it was great, for the ego. But I started to think like, wow, like I am TNP, because before TNP, like, I guess I was a popular guy and I had lots of friends and stuff like that, but like, I don't know, it was different. It was different. People start to treat you differently and stuff. And so that was the dangerous part about it. I forget your question.
There really was no question, and it was a tangent, and you were doing really good there.
Oh, you asked what eventually happened. Right?
Well, yeah, exactly. So get us into the new, bigger location.
Yeah, so I ran myself into the ground at that point. Was very, very burnt out from just all the highs that had been going on, and I just got more addicted to it, and I'm like, oh man, this is amazing. This is going to be this... this has so much potential, and I got to make this work. And I burnt myself out completely. I started to do very uncharacteristic things like, drink more than I usually did and eat. I went off the way I ate and started to gain weight. And like, it was one of those things that, because I was so stressed out and I was so anxious about things that I started kind of self-medicating with alcohol and food and not working out as much as I normally do and stuff like that, and I didn't even realize it, and then all of a sudden I'm just like, wow, like I just came to a point where I was like, man, what am I doing to myself, right? It's like I just blinked and I was like in this completely different position. So in the last year of TNP, I started to lose passion for the industry, and I've been in denial about that for a while. I've been ashamed to tell people, especially in the industry and my clients, and but I've now come to a realization that I'm not going to be ashamed of it anymore, and I'm going to just admit and be authentic and real about it. Like I lost passion for the industry.
Right. But what was so damaging is that you tried to keep up the appearance or keep up the business, right? Even though you weren't really your heart wasn't into it.
I got into it so passionate about fitness and nutrition, and I honestly ended up realizing that my passion was business. Yeah. So I was in this position where like I was so in love with running the business, but I didn't enjoy immersing myself in the fitness nutrition industry. I'll always be passionate about fitness and nutrition for myself.
Right.
but immersing myself in it every single day was very difficult. This is why I'm very adamant to some people. Some people seem to be able to pull it off, but most people, I don't think the advice of following is very, controversial and paradoxical, but I don't think the advice of following your passion is the right advice.
Whoa, bombshell. Okay, let's talk more about that. That was actually one of my questions.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you, what important truth do very few people agree with you on? So this is great.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's a long list. I have a lot of things that I'm kind of
contrarian on.
I'm countercultural in a lot of ways.
That's great.
I don't think. I mean, I always use the example of if you were a snowboarder, right? If you were so passionate about snowboarding, but if you had to snowboard for 40 to 80 hours a week for the rest of your life, you'd probably end up hating it, right? So I followed my passion, and that's exactly what happened. I completely immersed myself in it. I worked day in, day out on that industry, and I ended up hating it. I think, in my opinion, you should, and I'm not going to take credit for this. I heard this from, I don't know who, it could have been Ferris, it could have been Cuban, I can't remember, but someone said, don't follow your passion, follow what you're curious about. And I know we chatted about that in our coffee last week. I really, really like that. I think you follow what you're curious about, what makes you curious, because you're always going to be curious about it, and you continue that. And then from there, if you can build a business or a career that gives you everything you need financially, lifestyle-wise, then you can go out and do your passion when you want to, not when you have to, right? So I guarantee you there will be a day where I build a business on something I'm curious about, that I'm not necessarily like super passionate about and all that. I guarantee you I will then go back into the fitness and nutrition and do it very recreationally and enjoy it more than I ever have. So that's my take on it. I would give that advice to any kid or any person just starting out. I just don't think, and here's the other thing too, is especially if you want to get into something lucrative, following your passion can make you blind, right? Like, because
too emotional.
Yeah, too emotional. And like if you're, and hey, if you want to follow your passion, all the power to you. Some people seem to be able to pull it off. But if you want to get into something lucrative and something that's going to give you the resources that you need to be able to live the life you want, don't get blinded by going into your passion. Go into something that is lucrative and something that's going to give you what you want. You're still going to enjoy it. I'm not saying you can't. You got to enjoy it. If you go into something boring that you want to pull your hair out doing, but that's why I say curious.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you follow your passion was basketball at one point. Doesn't matter how many hours a day you practice. You're, if you haven't got that innate talent that's going to take you to the next level, you could shoot free throws for 12 hours a day in practice, and you're still not going to be a pro basketball player. 100%. So it's in your best interest to pivot, go with something curious like you did, went into fitness, and that's a perfect example of following what you're curious about. Yeah.
So that's my take on the whole passion thing. I feel very strongly about it. I learned it the hard way. I mean, that's ultimately how I feel about it. As far as TNP and losing passion for the industry, again, was losing passion for it, not afraid to admit it now. So I was really struggling with what I should do, but I was also in denial that, I was kind of putting it to the back burner. I thought, Kaylor, you've already invested this money. You've already invested so much time.
Yeah.
Reputationally, you're very invested as well, too.
So double down on it.
Edmonton's so I'm like, double down on it. I use the analogy of it was kind of like a struggling, when a married couple has a baby when they're struggling in their marriage to save it, right? And, I truly thought, when I looked for spaces for about 4 months, when I found this space, it was very, when we got great terms, and when I ended up negotiating and signing it, it was, I literally thought it would change the game. It was my dream location. It was, if you would have told me 5 years ago that I would have had a business that was in a location, it was almost 8,000 square feet. It was, it was one of the nicest private gyms in the city, and I literally thought it would change the game.
Yeah.
And I got in there and I completely burnt myself out opening it up. Very ambitious about it and just ran myself into the ground. And when I got in there, I thought everything would change. Yeah. And I bet you can guess how I felt. Now,
go ahead.
Sorry, I do want to add one thing. I do want to be very clear on that. The reason why TNP closes its doors was not solely based on the fact that I lost passion for the industry. Moving into the new location, we had a lot of complications.
Right.
I'm owning up to I made some bad business decisions. I made some mistakes that ultimately put the business in a vulnerable position. It was struggling initially off the bat. We opened up in our slowest time of the year because we couldn't get permits from the city. I had some other things that I was really banking on that didn't work out.
Yeah.
So I do want to be clear. It was a combination of me losing passion for the industry, not being happy going to work every day, being completely burnt out and tired. And then on top of that, now I have a struggling business in this new location. And if I want to make this work, I'm going to have to double down and get to work like crazy. And also put myself in a very tough financial position and take on a lot of risk.
Right.
So it was a combination of both. It wasn't just me being like, I don't like this industry. Peace, see you later.
Yeah, well, you don't strike me as the type of guy to give up on anything and just cut your losses. So, I mean, that's got to be incredibly challenging to have, come into these tough business decisions, maybe a couple bad deals, which people make, right? You're still young and learning. And then couple that with the fact that you're also losing passion in it. And you've been burning yourself out for the last few years. Like, it's totally understandable that would have happened.
Yeah, it was the worst position I've ever felt in. I felt helpless, and especially, I was the 100% owner of TNP, so I didn't have partners I could run this by or deal with this with. Or I had a great team that no question supported me, but it's just a little different. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you're responsible for everything, and you have to take ownership of everything. And it was really difficult to be in that position, and it was the hardest stretch of months of my life, and it was surreal. It was like a blur. The whole thing was a blur. I was so emotionally upset, mixed with struggling with deciding on what to do and everything. So it was very, very, very difficult, and
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I know it's tough to relive that, but it just kind of goes to show you, even if you're struggling with things, you shouldn't try and always muscle it out yourself, right? Ask for help, ask for advice. What would you do differently if you could go back? I mean, obviously with the passion gone, you would kind of, I don't want to say doomed to fail, but it's obvious your heart was somewhere else. But had you still been into it, what would you have done differently?
During the entire term of the business, or like when it shut down, or near?
Well, when you first started hitting those business struggles, when you were like, "Oh, this might not be a long-term thing anymore."
I wouldn't have. I probably wouldn't have expanded as much as I would have, and as fast as I would have. I would have been more content with just kind of staying in where we were. I would have niched.
Yeah,
for sure. I would have found a niche and dialed in on that. I mean, to be honest, I would have quit. I would have stopped the business sooner. Right? Yeah. But that's tough because you don't ultimately. Near the end, we were put in a position where the business just had to close. But
right.
If I could have prevented moving into that new facility, I mean, I definitely would have done that. That's easier said than done, though. I mean,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, knowing when to quit is a very tough decision and tough topic. It's very difficult, and I think going back, to be honest, did I deal with everything perfectly? No, I mean, I really didn't. But I mean, even if I did it again, knowing now what I knew, I wouldn't do it perfectly again. It was the most challenging thing I've ever been to. There was so many aspects. I was trying to make so many different people content and not let people down, and then I was trying to help myself and stuff like that. And so
I'm going to let this guy in. Hold on one second.
No worries.
Sorry about the interruption. That's my intern.
No worries.
He's going to be filming the next one.
Nice.
We're going big. We're going on to YouTube, baby.
I love it. Love it.
So
where were we at? Sorry.
So to really sum up for people, because I know when I told a few people that you'd be coming on my podcast, what they're really curious about, and I know you had the long Facebook post, and like you said in that, it's just not really the forum to get into the intimate details about any specific situation, right?
Yeah.
But so people understand, it was a combination, closing down TNP was a combination of simply a lack of a changing of priorities in your life, coupled with business decisions that kind of force your hand. Like you just, that happens in life. Good businesses shut down, right?
Yeah, it was definitely a combination. That's a good way to put it. A combination of me really struggling with being happy doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
And ultimately I always...
That's what it's all about. At the end of the day.
It really is.
And it sucks to put people out, but if they can't understand that it was negatively affecting your health, your psyche, your life, then that's really their own problem.
100%. I agree. I do want to emphasize though that it wasn't 100% that. I could say it was that, and I'm just, but I also want to own up to it and say that, the business was moving into that facility. It posed a lot of challenges, and it put the business in a situation where if we were to go on, it would have been an absolute, to be honest and frank, nightmare. I would have had to take on, it would have been a huge risk in my life. And ultimately that's kind of basically what happened. Again, going into the details is kind of irrelevant.
People don't need to know. It's your business.
Yeah. So, so that was ultimately kind of, that is the reason, really, at the end of the day, why we had to end up closing the doors. And it was a tough situation. Again, did I deal with it and close it down perfectly? No.
Right.
But I can sleep at night because I truly did my best. It's just a very difficult situation to be in. So
what's interesting to consider is, as bad as it seemed shutting it down at the time that you did, who knows what could have happened, like you alluded to. Like, it would have been a lot worse had you waited. So, really... For the time you were at, you made the right decision.
I had to rip the Band-Aid off, and it's, again, I was working with very smart people. I'm one of my strengths is I always consult with people who have been there before me and done it, and who are, quite frankly, just smarter than me, more experienced. And I was working with very smart people in the situation, and ultimately that was the best decision, and it was the... but again, there's the other side that, the business was kind of forcing us to make that decision as well too. So that's kind of the most authentic answer I can give.
How good did it feel to finally share that Facebook post and to kind of start talking about these things? Because to live not a lie, but just to live kind of a secret and to suffer with this for so long, like it must have just been a wave of relief washing over you.
It was literally every emotion in the book all at once. So I wasn't going to make a post. The reason why I didn't want to is because I didn't want to come off like I was playing the sympathy story, and like a lot of times when people make these posts, they get a lot of likes and a lot of support, and I didn't want it to come off like I was trying to do that, and I also didn't need that, to be honest, at that point. I had a lot of support with my very close friends that truly matter. Anyways, the reason why I ended up doing it is because I started to hear a lot of things, people saying that, I'm hearing this and I'm hearing that, and some
you got a bunch of haters.
Yeah, and some people that I thought would, reach out and chat didn't really want to have anything to do with me, and I was very, very confused by that. Here I was, I lost everything I had worked for in 5 years. No one wanted TNP to thrive more than I did. I was at my lowest point, and here I was, people having a lot of mixed information and all this stuff, and a lot of people were very curious. So I thought, you know what, I got to do it. So I wrote this post, and I went into it saying, you know what, because I had told you before, I didn't want a sympathy story. I didn't want get a bunch of likes and stuff like that. And although that was very nice, so I told myself going in, I said, Kaylor, if you're going to do this, you got to own up to everything. You got to be very authentic to the point where your heart's going to be racing when you post it. And I can honestly say that my heart has never been racing more than when I was about to click that.
It's incredible.
That post button. And it, you know what, the support that I got from it was amazing. I had people, I literally spent an entire week spending hours and hours reaching back to people and connecting with people. And, you know, it wasn't all positive. It was, you know, but the support was overwhelming. And you know, a really cool thing about a situation like this, when you go through it, I would call it not a cool thing, but it's a blessing. Mm-hmm. You end up realizing who should be in your life and who shouldn't. And I can honestly say that was the best part about it. Was it wasn't an easy way of doing it, but it's the most effective way. And
it's like a controlled burn almost, you know?
Yeah,
it's so black and white. When something shitty happens, and then all of a sudden you see who's there for you and who's not. Yeah. And it's like a blessing, like you said. And it's like, thank you for showing your true colors. Now I can cut you out.
And again, like, you know, there were a lot of people that when you build a business like that, a lot of people rely on you, and you have a lot of responsibility, and a lot of people are inconvenienced when and hurt when a business like that shuts down.
Yeah.
So I don't, you know, I'm not saying that I needed to see support from everyone, but it was one of those things that there were people that I truly thought were in this because for obviously themselves. I mean, that's first and foremost what everyone is in it for, but also in it because they truly cared about me and my life. And because there was a lot of people, I mean, everyone involved, whether it was clients, staff, anyone. They weren't just involved in the TNP community because I wanted them as a staff member or a client. I truly cared about them, and right. I think, and I can sleep good at night knowing that, you know, throughout the whole process, I showed that. But it was one of those things that there's just some people that I truly thought we had a caring for each other, a true, genuine caring for each other, that if TNP wasn't around, that we would still be in contact. And some people have shown me that, you know, that doesn't seem to be true, and things can always change. But so that, you know, that's just one of those things that that's what ends up happening. And then I get random text messages from people who I don't even know, who just say, I read your Facebook post and I just want to say that it hit me in the feels. Or
invitations to podcasts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I'd met you twice before I even saw that, and then like I didn't know the story behind TNP at all. But it seemed like there was a lot more to it than what people were saying. And I just, you know, I'm the type of guy who operates best one-on-one. I just wanted to get to know you because it's, you know, seems like a really, really good opportunity to maybe, you know, reach out to someone who, I didn't know if you were struggling or not, but, you know, it's good to see that you're in a super positive place about all of this now. And that kind of leads me to the next question of like, what's next for you? You know, you got the George Washington post, the quote.
Yeah, that's a good question, Shane. The thing is I'll say a couple of things. I've never had more fire inside me to, you know, one of my favorite quotes is, hard times don't build character, they reveal it.
Right.
And when I was going through all this stuff and I felt at my rock bottom and I'd lost everything I'd worked for, and I was feeling very vulnerable, very insecure, and felt like I had nothing, I really thought about that quote, and I said, you know what, Kaylor, here's an opportunity you can either let this take you down, or you can absolutely show yourself and show everyone else that you will not be stopped and nothing can take you down, and use this as fire to continue to go. And it really has, as hard as it's been, it's ignited this fire inside of me that really kind of is almost like, you know what, I care about things less. Like, I truly do. Like I care about the things that don't matter less. You know, reprioritize. It's really zoned into me what's truly important in life. I'm sticking to those fundamentals. I don't care what anyone else says. I don't care what anyone else thinks.
Yeah.
I'm just going to really stick to those things and use that fire to continue forward. The other thing I will say is I'm not trying to keep it this big secret. I know it's not Edmonton's top news or anything, but some people are curious, obviously. I'm not trying to keep what I'm doing next a secret because I want to like do this stupid thing where I'm trying to build anticipation or whatever. But if that happens, great. But the reason why I'm not fully saying what I'm doing next is because I just want to make sure that it's fully what I'm meant to do and what my next chapter is going to be. If I were to go out and tell everyone and post on social media, and then, in a month I realize it's not my next path, people might start to think, well, like, Kaylor, are you just one of those guys who just goes from thing to thing to thing? I'm truly not like that. I will say, though, that I found something. It's an online kind of business. It's a very lucrative business. And I'm very excited to immerse myself in that. I already have. I've already started working with clients and making money, and I'm happy to say that it's started off really good.
That's awesome.
And I'm going to continue with going into that, and I'm probably only about a few weeks away from being comfortable enough to say, hey, look, guys, this is what I'm doing next.
Right.
And I couldn't be more excited to just build something. My slate is clean, and I'm so excited to build something exactly the way I want to build it.
Yeah, your psyche is reconciled, everything's out in the open. And, who cares if you are the type of guy who wants to try a few things before something works, right?
Totally.
I mean, artists don't post pictures of their half-completed paintings before they release them to the public. So if what you're doing is building up before you're ready to present, all the power to you, man. Like,
and you know what? What really got me through it too is, I always seek out people who have the life I want. Successful people in all regards, not just financially, but and I like to meet with them. I like to get to know their life, their path, and out of the more than a handful of people I know who truly have the life I want and are in the direction of where I want to get to, they all have this story. They all have businesses that have failed. They all have times where they lost everything, and whether it was going bankrupt or losing their business or losing whatever, they all have this story. So that's settling to me, and that's one thing I really realized, like, Kaylor, don't let this take you down. Like, this is just part of the journey. Everyone has this story.
It's so micro. In the macro view of things, like this 1 year or 4 years of your life is so small.
Yeah.
How old are you?
28.
28?
Yeah.
It's that's a fifth of your life, pretty much. That's nothing.
Totally. It's really, really difficult to see that in the moment.
Of course.
Think, so Gary Vaynerchuk, who a lot of your listeners will know who that is.
Love Gary V on this show.
Yeah.
We're getting him to call in next week. Everyone tune in.
Absolutely. Make sure I'm here too. You might need a censor thing for him, but
dude, this is internet. You can swear if you want.
Really?
Should we start over? Yeah, you can say whatever you want.
Okay, I love that.
Although my mom, she's going to listen to this too, but she listens to everyone. But she complimented me on my last episode. She goes, I was just really happy. It was your first episode. You didn't say fucking. And of course, I've ruined that now for this one. So sorry, Mom.
Yeah. No, I love that. I'm going to keep it a little tame because I think my mom will be the first listener to this podcast. But what was I saying?
Oh, I don't know, man. You were talking about
Gary Vaynerchuk.
Gary V. Yeah.
Gary V. The thing with Gary V. He says a quote, and I had it on my phone for a while. He says, "Micro speed, macro patience."
Yeah.
And that's the philosophy I'm trying to adopt. Micro speed. So hey, you got to work with a sense of urgency. Yeah. I hate when people tell me, and I know you just did, but usually in a different format. I hate when people tell me that I'm so young and I have so much time, and I try never to tell people that we're gonna blink and we're gonna be 40, 50, 60, 70 years old. I always work with a sense of urgency. In fact, every single day I'm literally going through my day asking myself in everything I do, is this taking me closer to where I want to be? And I'm not even kidding. That's not even a stretch. Like,
because if you're not, then you're going backwards. You don't remain neutral. You're either going forward or you're going backwards.
100%.
People don't understand
the movies,
that.
The people that know me, even the movies I watch, I need them to teach me something. They have to have some sort of life lesson behind it. And that might be a bit excessive, but it's just the way I am.
Oh, man.
But micro speed, work with urgency, because that is super important, and you're not going to get very far if you don't have that micro speed. But macro patience on a bigger scale, you got to take a deep breath and realize that if you put in that micro speed, it is going to fall into place and it is going to happen. If you can't relax and be patient, it'll actually sabotage the whole thing. Yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to just have patience and work at a good speed. And life is about, man, you got to go, you got to fail. And we've all heard it before, but it's so prevalent and it's never been more pertinent to me now. But, you learn more from your mistakes and your failures than you do your successes. And Absolutely. I just heard Pitbull. I was listening to a pod. Pitbull's a fascinating guy.
He's on podcast now?
Yeah, he's on the new Tony Robbins podcast.
Oh, he's there's too many. There's too much good stuff out there. But to your point, you either win in life or you learn. There's never losing unless you give up.
100%. The way Pitbull said it. By the way, research. I'm not a huge fan of his music. But
Mr. Worldwide.
Mr. Worldwide is literally Mr. Worldwide. He is a genius. This guy is. And he is very into personal development. He's got his stuff together, came from a very, very tough place. Great story. But he said, you don't make mistakes make you.
Right.
And
I like that. It's good.
Yeah, and it's so true. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. And ultimately, I now understand why, 99% of people who want to build a business or be entrepreneurs end up not achieving what they want to achieve, because it's hard.
It's terrifying.
It's so terrifying. It's very hard. And I didn't realize the true risk you take building a business like I did until it was all gone.
Yeah.
It's a lot of risk. And, I get why some people would go through this and not want to. It's funny. I met with my mom shortly after, and she's like, Kaylor, why don't you just go get a job for a little bit?
Mom, you don't even know me at all.
Yeah.
How dare you, Mom?
And I literally just looked at her, and all I could say was, Mom, it's not in my blood. It is not in my blood, and there is nothing wrong with getting a job, and it's just not me. It's not I'd rather be a broke business owner than be someone making, a ton of money.
Yeah.
I need to control my day. I need to control my circumstances, and that to me is the most important. So, yeah.
Dude, amazing. I'm so grateful that you came here. Super appreciative. Really happy that, your story, your lessons can be applied to anyone. Really, I've learned from you. Anyone can. And I know people are going to be really excited to see what you do next, but who gives a shit about them? All that matters is that you're happy with what you're going to do next, and I'm excited to see it. And for other people who I know are curious, because you're a popular social guy, so anyone who doesn't know you already, where can they find you on Instagram?
Yeah, so my Instagram. First of all, I just want to say I'm very honored to be here, and Shane, you're a weapon. You're going places in life, and I don't know you extremely well, but I'm really excited about your path going forward, and I hope we can continue to connect. And I'm again honored to be on the podcast. I do also want to do a quick thank you. I want to thank all the people who were involved with TNP, whoever invested in TNP, whoever believed in TNP, whoever liked a TNP photo, literally anything. Doesn't matter who you are, if you were involved in any way. My team, I had an absolutely incredible team that helped me take the business to where it ultimately got to in its success, and clients, unbelievable community, and I just want to thank everyone involved, and I want to make sure that they understand how appreciative I am and just blessed I feel to have met them and have them invest in me and my business.
Good for you for saying that.
Thank you. And so I just want to make sure that was said, and I guess where do you find me? Instagram is at Kaylor.Betts.
Yeah. KAYLOR.BETTS.
You got it.
Beauty.
That's probably what I'm most active on. I will be honest, I'm struggling to find out my voice right now, because a part of my old voice is gone.
Yeah.
So I'm right now just kind of planning on my approach for my kind of personal brand story that I want to portray on Instagram. So I'm becoming more and more active. But,
go real. That's my advice. Just go real.
Yeah,
Don't think about it. Just do it.
Advice.
Document it.
It's great advice, Shane. Document, don't create.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. I got to start doing that more. I recently just went on Twitter, and I'd love more followers. So
you got to change your handle though.
What is it?
I was looking you up. It's
Kaylor Betts.
Kaylor something TNP. So we got to
Oh,
change.
no. That's my old Twitter.
Oh, what do you got?
I couldn't delete that account. So if anyone knows how to delete a Twitter account, DM me.
Perfect.
Please, because I need to delete that. But no, my new one, where you can find the most earth-shattering tweets on a daily basis.
Oh, you're building this up. I'm excited.
At Betts Kaylor.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Yeah.
You just flipped it.
It's very scientific.
You don't even have a profile picture yet.
Yeah.
I'm going to follow you, though.
Yeah.
At Betts Kaylor hasn't tweeted.
All
right, everyone follow Kaylor on Instagram and follow him on Twitter. Tweet the poor guy because his profile is pathetic right now.
Maybe you can console me. Shane, and then follow Shane Fenn. Shane Fenn. Where else can you... my email. I'm going to give my email because I want people to contact me if you want to connect or talk.
Yeah.
It's betskaylor@gmail.com. Fire me an email. My Facebook is just Kaylor Betts. I'm really easy to find because no one has that name on Facebook.
And he's a real pretty dude, so
I'm trying to keep up to you, Shane. So that's where you can find me, and please reach out. I love connecting with people.
Awesome. That was an hour, man.
Amazing.
We've been here for poor Ethan out there. He's setting up his cameras, and
that's awesome.
We'll get him in here. All right, Kaylor, thanks so much for coming in. I look forward to hooking up with you in the future and seeing what happens.
Thanks, Shane.
Cool, man.
I really appreciate it.
Take care, buddy.
Okay.
Guys, I really appreciate you listening. Thank you so much for the support. You can help me out by subscribing, by sharing my channel, and also let me know who you guys want to hear from.